All right, it's Halsey Scheider with the Helicopter Podcast, and it is day number 3 of this year's very first Verticon. And this year has been extremely, probably the best show that I've gone to. And a big part of that is because of Robinson. You guys have made this a very exciting show. You guys are bringing lots of new exciting things to market. I've never been a part of a new aircraft reveal, so coming to that on Sunday was so much fun. So I think a big thanks to you guys for the innovation, because it's made this year's very first Verticon so exciting. But before we get into it, of course, introductions. I'm Halsey Scheider. I'm the host of the Helicopter Podcast, and I am joined by David Smith, CEO of Robinson, and Sean Doyle of Robinson. Sean, you have to remind me of your title.
I'm the VP of Engineering for Robinson Helicopter. I take care of all of the engineering staff.
Okay, perfect. And you've never podcasted before?
I've never podcasted before.
His voice is good.
He's a pilot, so he knows.
Okay.
He knows how to talk to the
I was
tower.
going to say, man, I'm listening to you over here. I'm like, man, you have a good podcasting voice.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you guys for both joining. David, we sat here a year ago, I guess in Anaheim, but same difference. And it was at that time that you were announced of taking over the helm. Just a quick recap of the last 12 months on what you're most proud of, the accomplishments. We'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that attracted, I think Sean, I won't speak for him, but attracted us both to Robinson is Robinson's got a very unique recipe, and it's been a closely guarded secret of how both they do it and how great it is, really. We didn't market it terribly well, I'd say, but there's a lot of things that, due to both timing, which is a big part of any of these things, good luck, good timing, it comes into favor of things like vertical integration, things like having control of your aftermarket and overhaul business. Those are really important pieces post-COVID, and so we've been well positioned to benefit from a lot of demand that far exceeds supply. So we can, in this case, do the things that we need to take care of customers better than others, I think, because we have so much resource focused on making and servicing our products. That's been exciting, so I think that I'm proud of that. But I think on another point that Sean and I kind of share a lot of time on product strategy and product development together, and I'm proud that we're able to push the safety technology level of our products, and hopefully by sort of an indirect way, the industry up. I always marveled at how automotive over the years got safer and safer, and you'd see more and more airbags, you'd see more and more mirrors and cameras, you'd see sensors for backups and automatic braking and adaptive cruise. I love that, and I think the power that drove that was thoughtful engineers being promoted as a culture to say, let's lead on safety, and then the other folks had to come along, and I think you brought the whole industry up together. So we talked about it on a panel yesterday that there are a lot of people that still, because we haven't done a great job as an industry sharing how safe this industry really is, they won't get in a helicopter. And so our long-term mission is to make that not a thought, not an issue. And I think there's things we're doing that will make that better. We have high-risk missions, and there's no chance that we're ever going to eliminate the risk of helicopter flight, but we can do a lot. So we added 2-axis autopilot to the R66 standard. We added bird strike windows to the aircraft standard. We added a cockpit camera to the aircraft standard. Those are all things that I'm very proud about, and I think that's just the beginning. Having on the 88, we were debating, in our development, what do we put in the basic aircraft? And so, Sean has a lot of history with Garmin, and the 4-axis is an excellent solution, has a lot of future capabilities that we think are ready for the market. And so 4-axis standard it is, and that's what's in the aircraft.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk more about the R88, of course. It's the elephant in the room.
Right.
My listeners are probably like, just get into it, but we have to build up to it. Sean, just give us a little bit of background, how long you've been at Robinson, your background in engineering.
Sure. So I came to Robinson 2 years ago, same time that David joined the company. And prior to that, I spent most of my career at Garmin, working as flight test pilot, fixed wing and helicopter, doing avionics and flight controls. Took a little turn after Garmin and spent a couple of years at Joby running their flight test group in the electric aviation space. And then the opportunity came up to come to Robinson. I had worked with the team at Robinson quite a bit over the years when I was at Garmin. Knew the people really well, knew the product really well from having used it, and was super excited to be given the opportunity to come in and lead the engineering organization.
With Sean leading the engineering, how important is it to have a guy that also has an extensive flight background? How does that kind of integrate it into him being successful?
Sean has the exact skill sets that I am the least qualified for. I'm not the best engineer in the world to begin with, but I'd say that like his background in using the product and in developing digital systems and autopilot systems. That is the area that I am the weakest at, and I'd say it's a great compliment. I've done, some parts of product development in more detail than others, and I feel like coming into the role, I would not be as successful. We would not be as successful if we didn't have a pairing like we do. So it's been great, and I think when you think about future aircraft, increasingly they're going to be digital creatures, and we need to have better and better involvement in the human interface and all the controls. So I think it's the right recipe for where we are, and the fact that he still flies a lot and is part of our kind of team that helps develop the future engineers into pilots. I mean, that kind of stuff makes this an even better recipe for Robinson.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I can definitely see that that's a good synergy to have, both the pilot side, the engineering side. I'm always fascinated to hear just a little bit of a day in the life of what it looks like for you at Robinson, especially now with all the innovation that's happening. Obviously, so many announcements, the NxG, the R88, so much exciting things. What is the day in the life for you? It's a Monday morning at 9 a.m. What happens next?
So I spend most of my days talking to people, working with the engineering teams at Robinson, spending a portion of the day working with a group we call our sustaining engineering team. They take care of the production line. They take care of our customers. So we stood up a dedicated team to really focus on solving problems for customers, whether that be with the aircraft getting produced, folks in the field. So making sure that we are triaging any issues that are coming into us and that those are getting dealt with promptly. The fun part of my day is when I get to collaborate with our engineers on new designs, whether that be our folks who are working on the interior of the new R66 and getting to see the ideas that they've come up with and add my thoughts to it, either from a pilot's perspective or trying to put myself in the shoes of the customer and really work with them and collaborate on those designs, or whether it be our R88 team where we're diving deep into technical issues of gearbox design and how we're going to test gearboxes and these types of things. So a lot of time spent in conversations with our engineers and helping shape the vision for what the products are going to be and making sure that we're executing on those.
It preps you well for shows. He's never in his office, always on his feet.
Yeah.
And so it's like one of those things where
just easy.
Yeah, the shop is got the same kind of hard concrete floors as trade show floors. So yeah, good prep.
That's awesome. How many, and maybe you don't know the exact number, but how big is the engineering team now at Robinson?
Well, what I will say is it's twice as big as when I started.
Sure.
We have been bringing in a lot of engineers, obviously, to work on R88 and to beef up the rest of the engineering organization to improve our service levels out to the customers. We've had really good success bringing in both new young engineers straight out of school, some really great talent that we found coming from all over the place, but folks who share a passion for wanting to develop new products in the helicopter space. So that's been really exciting. And we've gotten some more experienced engineers who have come to us out of the automotive space.
Interesting.
Some of the electric vehicle startups in the Los Angeles area have unfortunately not prospered, and some really amazing people have come come to us from that space. We've also brought in some kind of new thinking into engineering. We have an industrial designer now who's really been leading some of the work in terms of the human interaction with the helicopter, the shape of the instrument panels, the way the controls feel, these types of things. So a little bit of a new function than we've had before.
And when you're looking at an engineer, this will be two questions. So I'll start with you. But what are you looking for? If there's a listener right now that is excited about Robinson and is maybe considering a career move or whatnot, what would you be looking for in an engineer working for you?
Two things that make someone successful at Robinson as an engineer as a foundation. One of them is a really thorough understanding of engineering fundamentals. When we do engineering interviews, we ask really what seem like basic questions about engineering principles, and a lot of people struggle with those. So we want people who really understand the fundamentals, because if you understand those, you can solve very complex problems elegantly. If you don't understand the fundamentals, whatever solution you come up with will be deficient in some way. So that's the first thing. The second thing is hands-on experience. People who have done things with their hands, who have built things, fixed things, who have practical knowledge. That is priceless to us because, again, we build very practical aircraft that need to be easily maintained, that are as light and as simple in design as we can make them, because that makes them reliable. So folks who have done things with their hands make great engineers for us.
Yeah, awesome. And I can imagine that there is a place, a lot of places where engineers could be working right now, whether it's in automotive or just within our aerospace world. So how do you as a company, what are the benefits for an engineer of coming to work for Robinson?
Yeah, when we pitch to young engineers or even experienced engineers what the value proposition is, we're not going to be the highest paid, but I think people will be the most fulfilled. And there's two kind of ways I look at it. The number I always ran about in my mind when I was an engineer was the number of hours you put into your job and the amount of payoff and work accomplished that you feel. Like it's like a measurement of friction and waste and bureaucracy or meetings or whatever. And a lot of businesses, that's a very high amount. And so your productivity that you feel good about is small. And so we provide an excellent payoff. People spend their time and they put their hours in. The ownership is extremely high. People are in charge of large portions of aircraft and significant pieces of kit and things on the aircraft. That gives a great payback for just how much work they put in and how much they feel coming back out. And on a show like this, that's why we paid to bring all these young engineers out here so they can point to the thing that they're designing and the thing that they put into the 88 or into the NxGs. And I think they can exert that ownership. That's huge. The other one I think that is a practical one is Robinson has been probably the most progressive in the industry about promoting helicopter pilots and their staff. And so we have a large number already that are up to the past private into commercial. Some folks are just starting their journey. A lot of the folks that Sean brought in over the last probably 24 months have been really coming over because they want to be pilots. And I think it's great that it makes them better engineers. I tried to do this in other places I've worked. And it's tough because sometimes lawyers look at it and say, no, you can't do that. It's high risk. Well, the reality is our chief legal counsel is a pilot himself, and he flies all the time.
Yeah.
So it gives us this huge advantage where everybody in our organization, so it's not just engineers, customer service folks are in the training program, customers and the people in the operations team are in the training program, salespeople. It's an open book for folks that want to become, at the very least, through the ground school phase, so they can speak the language of being a pilot and understand the major principles. And then many of them will progress into at least private, and then they'll decide if they want to continue further. But we offer incentives for that. We offer ways that folks can have lower cost operating of the aircraft. So it's, if you got a hobby as a pilot, it's a great affordable way to get access to the brand new Robinsons, off the production line. So pretty nice setup we have.
Yeah, it's a really cool perk.
And I want to add to David's thoughts there, whether we're talking about our engineers or anyone in our organization, people recognize that the work they do at Robinson Helicopter matters in the world. That's what I love about the helicopter business. It's why I was interested in it from a very young age. helicopters do useful things in the world, whether we're training pilots to go out and fly EMS missions, or whether it's people doing utility work with our helicopters or ag work, any number of things. But we talk a lot internally. I talk with my team about what the end customers are doing with the products, and that their work actually matters in the world. They're helping grow the world's food. They're helping save people's lives. They're doing these things. And at the end of the day, people like to go home to their family and to talk about how they worked on this helicopter and they do these useful things. It gives people meaning in their work, and that's so important.
I think that's incredible. And I think David kind of talked a little bit about that earlier too, this perception of helicopters being scary and dangerous. And yeah, I think helicopters by and large have a PR problem.
Yeah.
And so I think for OEMs to be able to help support that, hey, look, helicopters are part of every single facet of our economy.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I was just having a conversation with PG&E, right? And all the,
Oh yeah.
Imagine,
Yes.
they
Light
operate
power, fuel,
70,
oil,
75 helicopters, at a given time just to keep the power on, right? And how important that is.
Yep.
Producer Zach over here was in a bad car accident 2 years ago, and a crew that we actually both flew air medical for was the crew that picked him up. And the reason why he's here and healthy and happy is because the helicopter got him to the trauma center so he could get the surgery.
It's amazing.
Right away. So, I mean,
Amazing.
the impact of helicopters is significant.
Yeah.
And so for your team to understand that impact and buy into that idea is just so important.
At Astronautics, we're aviation problem solvers. With over 60 years of OEM and retrofit experience, bring us your toughest avionics, connectivity, cybersecurity, and system challenges. We'll work with you to find an innovative, reliable, and quality solution. We turn problems into solutions. Visit us at astronautics.com.
But so a really key part of that is the PR problem you talk about is both not confronting inappropriate negative narratives that are wrong, but also just an absence of communication. I grew up in South Louisiana, like not 50 miles from some of the largest oil and gas operations in the world. And you look at that, and I didn't get exposed to helicopters until after I graduated from college.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And came randomly back to Bell. And I thought, what a tragic miss.
Yeah.
As I grew up in that state, and it just wasn't part of the discussion. So I think we have an opportunity in the industry to just take what's already there, tell the stories. That's part of why we did the Climb Higher series, was just telling the story starts that discussion. And with the help of some of our great social folks like Evan, we were able to take that and get the story, propagated all over the world. And maybe it inspires a kid. I mean, that would be, sort of a long game play to combat our PR challenge.
Well, I think it 100% will. And that's the beautiful thing about media today, right? Social media has some toxic traits to it, but there's also a lot of positive traits. Podcasting, right? We live in a world now where a guy like me can literally just start talking one day and then people start listening. And so it's neat to have that little piece of the pie.
Right.
And I 100% think that your videos, my podcasts, other social media influencers within this space are having an impact on introducing people into this world, whether they're going to be pilots, mechanics. I think it's also helping get some more diversity within our industry, which is super cool. I was hanging out with Faith Ortega the other day, who's an awesome helicopter mechanic and has a huge following at How To Helicopter. I can only imagine what that's done for little girls and wanting to be mechanics, right?
Last night at my dinner for our dealers, we had a nice dealer dinner, and my Indian dealer was next to me, and he had this drawing he showed us of what his daughter had drawn. It was an aircraft design. And his wife insisted that he show me and that we look at it. And he asked if I would write a note back to her. And I thought, like, the impact these things have and all the connected nature of our business and the great things we do, it will absolutely make a difference on a kid at that age. She's 7, right? So like that age, they are deciding all the things that they care about,
huge.
right? So I thought it was just a good example of what you're saying, that the world is small and the tools we have can amplify very quickly. Social is, like you said, can be negative. But I think for the most part, we were talking about this in our dealer meeting. We've got one of the greatest, largest Robinson tribes of any OEM out there, 400 plus service centers and dealers that as a whole, they all are, hundreds of people and, thousands of families and all the like. So I think using that as a tool for good to try to drive that message of inclusion and, interest in the future, it's a good scenario.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I fly helicopters because when I was 7 years old, I saw a 407 land at a day use area. It was a air medical situation. seeing that helicopter land, of course I didn't know it was a 407 then because I was a little kid.
Yeah.
But I can picture it so well to this day that I know it was a 407.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, it was just, I think it has a big impact and now with social media, and I just think it connects, right? And so I think that's super cool. Speaking of marketing, I would say that one of the biggest changes that I've seen at Robinson Helicopters is marketing. You have an engineering background, but it seems like you know a thing or two about marketing as well, because you have put together a team that is absolutely knocking it out of the park. What has kind of been your marching orders to the marketing team on what you need to do at Robinson to be more relevant within the industry?
I'd say there's a couple different ways this has gone about, and I think Sean mentioned earlier the infusion of some industrial designers in our team has helped give a story to tell in that space. The work we did with the 88, product development centric, and a lot of the work before that Will, who leads our BD team, did to help circulate the ideas and get requirements out of the space to build out and form up that narrative. The work we're doing with the U.S. Army to try to sort of help them with a future training role. Each of those stories needs a storyteller, and we started with the Climb Higher in the same regard. That the idea of I need marketing to fundamentally be a really strong storytelling organization. And Robin's background, I mean, she is phenomenal, and her team has been great. And I think the way that has evolved is, I wish I could say that it was like pre-programmed and planned, but we got really lucky.
Sure.
She happened to live in Torrance and had some exposure to helicopters. It was like a perfect match. But her automotive background has helped us do things in a way that is, at its core, automotive style, automotive reach, automotive mindset. And that tends to be very consumer friendly. So it ends up being emotion and connecting to people and getting people to want and desire to be in that seat with the person on the screen. And I think we've done a lot of that. And that's what I think our videos did for this unveil and the NxG and the R88 unveils. And I think you're only going to see more of that. The recipe works. And I think it can go right at that PR challenge we talked about earlier too. But I see the same story evolving with the way we're approaching this U.S. Army relationship, that we don't have a fair perception in the market on that. And so telling them how we're going to take a product that has been so successful training the world's civilian pilots, and now taking that and saying, okay, and we, by the way, also have trained most of Africa's pilots recently, and have a Nigerian school with 4 R66s training there. But the idea of it's a big distance from that to U.S. military, and I think a storytelling operation born from the same success of the marketing campaigns you've seen is going to be highly effective. And so those are all things that are just the nature of having really good people that you stay out of the way of, or you give them what they need. I mean, Robin certainly has a lot of things that she needs me to stand up and say. You saw me do a lot of that this week. As long as I can deliver that line, she can handle the rest.
You got to be the face.
And Sean's work is on the product side is exactly the same way. Like, he wanted to lean in really heavily on improvements in industrial design because he is a customer. He's flown the aircraft a lot, and when he was at Garmin, he had an aircraft right there all the time. And I think those improvements and the things we've done are exactly what other customers want. And so I mostly just have to get out of their way, give them the money they need, the resource they need, get out of the way. Same thing with marketing,
Yeah, it's really cool. And leading up to the big reveal, I loved some of the teasers. I think maybe we get a little stiff sometimes in this industry, and we forget that we can have a little bit of fun. Yeah. And so when those videos popped up and it's the blurred face and the changed voice, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really fun. So kudos to you, Sean. Big news this week, obviously, and I promise listeners we will talk about the R88, we'll talk about the NxG. But just from your experience this past few days, what has the show felt like? What is the energy that you've felt surrounding the booth? Every time I walk by Robinson, it's like, it's almost like so packed. It's like, oh man, maybe in an hour I can come back and finally see the helicopter. What has it felt like?
It's felt really great. We have been working on these projects for a long time internally, the R88 for years, R66 NxG for over a year now. And so we are very used to them internally. So it's the thing you live with every day. Coming here and talking to people and seeing them discover this and the excitement that they have over what we've been doing has been great. We brought a large engineering team with us to to engage with customers and have them have conversations with customers. And it's been great to see those interactions where customers observe something and say, you know, why did you do this? Or I really like the thing that you've done here. And to see that interaction and have our engineers develop that understanding of what is resonating with customers, as well as a lot of our customers are really technically astute and they ask really insightful, difficult questions, but they lead to insights on the engineering side of, you know, if you did it this way, instead, it would be easier for me in the field. So love the excitement that we brought to the show this year with a couple of product announcements. But more importantly, I really like the positive interaction between folks who've been to our booth and our team that we've had here.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And the booth itself has changed. It's very aesthetically pleasing. I think it's much larger as well.
Yeah, much larger.
And so it's really fun for me. I mean, David's known this, and I've been a Robinson guy for a long time. I learned in Robinsons. I don't think if it was for Robinson helicopters, I would even be a pilot, just because of the affordability aspect of it. So just all these things, I've always been a passionate, excited person, but I knew nothing about Robinson, honestly, other than at that time there was an R22, an R44, and an R66. I didn't know anyone at Robinson. I didn't know anyone. And then it was David came around. Our first talk was on the horizontal stabilizer. And then since that time, it's just been so fun to watch the evolution. David, what has this last few days meant to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, there's nothing more. Probably second most exciting thing is a launch. First most exciting is a first flight. So we'll be headed to that before too long. But I think the industry goes too long between new launches. I think we've gotten in this unfortunate habit of stretching aircraft longer and longer and not doing the hard work of pushing a product change or a product enhancement that really adds all those safety on-ramps for new features and new technology. So I love that we're doing that. I think that's part of what I wanted to do when we joined. So this has been one of many things along the road of what I hope to achieve by coming here. And I'm super happy with the progress that the engineering team has had to get to this point, to enable us this way. Certainly the work we did last year was trying to build a foundation where it wouldn't seem unnatural when we came out and said, hey, we're going to go with both a bigger aircraft that uses the same hallmarks and features of the current lines. So it is a Robinson-built utility workhorse for these larger missions. And I think that foundation was being laid over all of the months we've known each other there. And I feel like to that extent, it feels like we have achieved a milestone on a very, very long marathon journey.
Of course.
So, yeah.
No, it's been so fun. Well, the big news is the R88, obviously. It's been teased for a while now. Concept to the reveal this past Sunday, how many years has this been actually in the works?
So interestingly, I was having a great conversation with one of our lead engineers on the project and talking about sort of the origin story of R88. And a lot of the serious work started during COVID. Folks needed something to do. And so Pete Riedel, my predecessor at Robinson, and one of the engineers started sketching out what this helicopter would look like. But what I learned this week that was amazing was it was actually Frank's vision to build this helicopter. When they started thinking about the R66, Frank really wanted to build a big utility helicopter, but decided that was a little too ambitious at the time and decided to build the R66 as a stepping stone to get to that bigger utility helicopter. So the origin story of the R88 actually goes back to Frank in the early 2000s was when he had this idea.
So that's really interesting. I had not heard that, so I love that. But one of the things that's cool. That's also neat about that is that validates stuff that was told to me when I was at Bell years ago. And it was part of the lore that helped us fuel the energy to build the 505, and then helped expose me in an unusual way to Robinson initially. So the world is all very close in rotorcraft, and so the fact that at that time my VP of Business Development, Will, and I worked together actually thinking through that as the other side of the story of competitive belief that there was an 88 coming because Frank was going to do it, and reality is there probably was that reality coming. Well, here we are. Now I'm here, and we're helping make it happen. So it's a really interesting way that the world works, right? So.
Well, that's what we talked about last year when you were on the podcast. I asked, if Frank was here right now, what would you say to him? And I feel like that's such a neat thing that you just brought up with Pete. Of course, we lost Pete this year, and that's a sad thing. And he was really so instrumental with Robinson, and then of course Frank. I mean, he was the true
Yeah.
visionary.
Yeah.
So the fact that you guys, the new generation, the next generation that's taking this company to a level that we haven't seen, is still honoring that legacy. When these aircraft are flying and they go through certification, they will be your aircraft that you've helped push to the world, but they'll have the legacy of Pete and Frank.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's really incredible. There's a humanity to it, right? And I think that's a really neat story. And so I hope you guys continue to tell that story.
I think we're
because-
supremely blessed that most of the people, we just celebrated a bunch of 30 and 40 year anniversaries for work employees. And it's amazing how many of them have vivid and deep memories of when Frank interviewed them, particularly the engineers were all interviewed by Frank. And they all have those memories of the questions that they asked, that he asked, and how hard it was to be in the room with him, knowing his sort of immense technical knowledge. And so those things we're in the generation where those memories are fresh. And everywhere else in the industry, you think about the folks that started the efforts over at Air Special, or the folks that started the efforts at Bell or Leonardo. All these things, they are a long ways from those folks now, multi-generations away. Sikorsky is multiple generations away. So you think about that, we have the blessings of recent memory that others don't. So I think the best part about this is we're still doing this while we've got an army of folks that are fresh on Team Frank and Frank approach. And so that's at the core of what we do. It's why we're so weight efficient and why our team is so ruthlessly focused on cost.
Yeah, I mean, that was his thing, right? I
Yes.
mean, that's what introduced the aircraft to the market originally with the R22. I don't even know where to start on how you build a new aircraft. So from a rudimentary level, a pilot level, explain to me, Sean, it goes from a sketch to then what?
Actually, it starts begin with the end in mind, to steal a little Stephen Covey there, which is think about what you need the aircraft to do that isn't being done today. So what is the mission that needs to be accomplished? In the case of the R88, it's really focused around the multi-mission role, but that is providing higher capacity lift at lower cost with more reliability. So if you start with that in mind, then drawing the helicopter becomes easy.
Sure.
In that you start with what you know. So at Robinson Helicopter, you start with something that looks like an R66, and you take away everything that doesn't add to that end mission, and then you start adding the pieces that you need in order to get there. So how much power do you need? How big does it need to be? And iterate over and over again. We've been through a lot of versions of the aircraft, starting on paper, and then several years ago built the first little frames of what the aircraft could be so we could get a sense of the size. And then we built a plywood mock-up of it so that we could refine that even further and learn so much, changed a whole bunch of things. Now we have a more refined mock-up, and we're still learning and refining. The refinements become smaller and smaller as we go, but we just keep iterating. But it's always keeping that end objective in mind.
One of the things that you talked about during the launch was just the specs of the R88, right? The performance, specifically high altitude operations, power, payload capacity, full fuel. I think it's 1,800. All these targets. How do you guys develop those targets, and how does that actually all kind of come together?
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R22 to the R66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Well, so there's several factors. One, you look at the world of how many power plants are available. Power plants are enormous part of building any helicopter or any aircraft. And so we certainly start by putting out feelers in the general space. Once we get an initial idea of those missions that have unmet needs, we build out a requirement set that can be quite squishy, can go up and down quite a bit. That's what happened in this case. Was we went out to the market thinking we needed something in the 7-8 seat category. And, as we were able to build out the performance around the aircraft, you could see that potentially we could go up higher and the customers didn't really have a threshold. They said, at least this many seats, but I could use more in certain applications. And the space became a high value commodity. They wanted more volume. So you give them all that kind of for free in the nature of the design. So we set the engine power plant as a major anchoring point. So early on, had to settle in on who that partner would be. So that part started much earlier than other supplier agreements and things like that you have to have. But once you lay that in, that gives you a good starting point for what power is available at different conditions. They all have really great, thorough analysis of what their engines are capable of, simulation decks and things you can use to build out performance. And from there, our team goes to work on sizing the other components from that. The rotor system comes from that, and the gearbox and gear train come from that. Things that then size and package your steel frames. In this case, we use steel frames to hold all of our dynamic components for a lot of really good reasons, and nobody else does that. It's crazy. I tried to do that at Bell, and they have it on the 505, but it was a very different design approach from them, so it was tough for them. But for us, we make it. We weld everything up at the shop in Torrance, and it makes the light, cost-effective, repeatable structure. It's easy to support and supply. So I think that's the kind of stuff that we start the architecture development. And then as you're doing that, the things that Sean mentioned about the mock-ups, those iterate really quickly on physical space and sizing and distances. And we spend a lot of time on ceiling heights, a lot of time on width and shoulder width around the seats. Do you want it tight like an airline, or do you want it somewhat more spacious for tourism or for charter? All those things are debates. And as you're doing that, we've got a whole team of folks that are really strong analysts, and they do both structural analysis, fatigue analysis, and then crucially, weight analysis. Everything in helicopters is weight, and you have to be super, super thoughtful as you make these changes, that every inch of fuselage makes a difference in weight. Every blade you add is a bunch of weight and cost and complexity and all those things. Every time you think about increasing tail length or blade length, you add tail length, and you have all these things that sort of shape and shift with each other. So the fun part about it is we used to call it a rubber aircraft in my previous life, because everything kind of moves in different directions. But once you get to the point where you're at this stage, it is very small. You're plus or minus inches in a couple directions, still open to be changed here. And very soon we'll be striking the toolings, the major tooling structures that are going to be used for the production aircraft. And that's the kind of thing that says there's no turning back.
Yeah,
that's your aircraft.
This is it.
That's your aircraft. So the performance numbers are a good example where there's still push and squish on those a little bit, but generally we try to go in and say these are the thresholds, and everything will be something better than that, something above that, but we don't know how much and where it'll come in. So yeah.
And one of the things that's very important early in the process, so we'll come up with what we think the numbers are going to be for capacities and capabilities for the aircraft. But then we took time to go out and find the smartest people we know in the business who do the missions that we envision for this helicopter. This is where R88 is quite a bit different for Robinson than what we've done before. When we talk about a personal use helicopter, you or I could sit down and imagine, as people who fly helicopters, what it is that we would want in a helicopter. So we could write all the requirements ourselves, and we get pretty close. With an R88 that's going to go out and serve all of these different missions, whether it be firefighting or EMS or utility work, you have to go talk to the people who do that work. So we took the concepts that we had, the preliminary designs that we had, and found those people who were willing to talk to us and ask them questions and said, how about this range? Is this good for you? And they'd say, oh, I want this range. And then most importantly, we say, why? How fast do you want to go? And they say, I want to go this fast. And you say, well, why do you want to go that fast? Well, because of this. So we could really understand not just the number they were giving us, because we don't want to just hit a number. We want to understand why they want to do that. What is it in their mission? And can we solve that requirement in a better way? So a lot of conversations with customers early on that validated and caused us to move the numbers around. Do you want a little more fuel or less payload, less fuel, more payload? These trades were all validated by customers who will eventually get to use the helicopter.
It was actually really fun, and I think one of the most amazing things that tells you this industry is still a very tight industry, but very professional. We had probably 20 of the top executives of basically all the major operators NDA'd for 18, 20, 24 months, getting exposed to these discussions and trades and several follow-up and iterations. Not a word of it leaked out until, the show. So
yeah, it's
really
crazy.
amazing.
Yeah, I was trying to get some intel. I was at the factory just a couple months ago, and kudos to Randy and Will, man. I was really trying to push, and they were locking it down. That has to be so important, right? The end user is the people that really can dictate what the aircraft should be. And that's the hard part with helicopters too, is there's so many different types of end users: air medical, utility, ENG, private use, all these different mission sets. So to be able to have the DNA of all those different mission sets within one aircraft is what really gives it that utilitarian option of, being air medical or
That's right,
whatnot.
whatever you need.
So talk to me, David, a little bit about the where you envision the R88 and all of its different missions.
Well, so this is something that Sean has been extremely vocal about in our team meetings and all the approach to this, is that one of the recipes of Robinson that's been most successful is creating markets, not necessarily just fitting into existing markets. And I think that's actually why we kind of picked the positioning of this product where it is, in addition to the things I mentioned earlier. The idea that there's a potential now at the price point and at the demonstrated production capability that Robinson has, we can offer this as a sort of democratized firefighting capability for the world, where it is no longer working to have migrating fleets of super heavies and mediums and things to do the firefighting frontline work, because the firefight is so broad and widespread, and it's not feasible to run it the way we've done it. So I think a key aspect of the 88's capability is, and it's got a fire tank on the aircraft today as one of the demonstrations of its utility, and it is extremely capable for quick response to early fires. And that, unfortunately, the LA fires we just went through, they went quite a while before they had aerial support, sometimes because of the winds. That was tough too. But I think reality is having assets right there at the ready, and also at the 3 or 4 other places where fires started around the same time, would be better, and we can democratize that. I also think that there's an opportunity. We're partnered with Operation Hilo on civilian emergency response, and it was super invaluable during Hurricane Helene, but that'll be definitely not the last time they're needed. The idea of having folks, and we have a lot of private owners who've already put down deposits on 88s, and those folks, we are confident, are the kind of people that will say, yeah, I'm pulling all the seats out, and now we're going to load it up with gear and supplies and medicine and get people health and safety and hope while they need it. So I think there's a bunch of this stuff that is centralized infrastructure, leads to Chinooks and Blackhawks, great aircraft, but they're not fit for some of the types of emergency services or even some of the firefighting we need. So they're not alone anyway. They need support from smaller assets. So I think that's one of our big opportunity space. The other one I'm super excited about is the future state of law enforcement is not, and public safety in general is not, expensive aircraft carrying extremely expensive cameras. We believe it's a mix of manned assets and unmanned assets. So our drones that we've been building in Torrance recently, that product is perfectly suited to fit on an 88 in huge quantities and be able to airdrop and support both accelerated search and rescue, broad area, complex space of public safety like concerts and political rallies and protests and the things where we've had examples of challenging public safety environments. And I think helicopters are essential for aerial support. There's really no solution that's worked without them, but they need more eyes. They need more abilities to get closer to areas of concern and to alert people potentially to say, hey, now there's a security situation east of you, follow me. And the drone just leads the people away. That is a doable thing today, in addition to what we've talked about around accelerated search and rescue, of finding a missing child or finding a disabled adult, that these aircraft can accelerate 4 to 10x with very limited additional tech. And so I see the 88 as an engine to give people that public safety outcome.
Yeah, it's super cool. And talking yesterday with Ascent and learning more about their product lines and the vision is awesome. And I give you credit, David, for seeing that. I think that's you had something intuitive there to see that this is kind of where the world's going, and the synergies of drones and helicopters working together. It used to kind of feel like it was going to be either helicopters or it was going to be drones, right? There was no middle ground. And I think now, with specifically your relationship and ownership of Ascent, it really seems like, oh man, we can work together, right? We can do things together that will increase safety. The swarming technology idea is incredible. So I'm really excited to see kind of how that all plays out. And I'm also excited that it's working together and not one or the other.
I hate fights like that are false choices. And like law enforcement departments have faced this for at least a decade, probably 2 decades now, where they have a drone budget and a helicopter budget, and they are trying to prove themselves to one another or to their superiors. And I'd argue that this is a unifying effort that could potentially bring these groups together and just explain how the future is this, much more evolved, much more thoughtful, kind of orchestra of capabilities that need a conductor, and a conductor is always a human in this case. And I think that's the exciting future that we see.
Sean, I'm going to start with you on this. This is a bit of a hot topic. David can follow up as well. I'm not a helicopter engineer. I'm not a helicopter expert. I've seen a lot of helicopters that have two rotor blades that are very effective in a lot of different mission sets, to include firefighting, heavy lift. To me, that's not a new thing, right? We've seen that. If I've seen any negative feedback so far on the R88 release, it's this idea of, I wish it had one more blade. And of course, it's all the people on social media that I don't know if they actually have the aerodynamic background to actually speak to why that seems to be such a hot button. So Sean, I guess explain to me why a two-bladed system is actually a great option.
Sure. Of course, like all of the aspects of the helicopter, there's a design trade that happens with the rotor and what type of rotor that you want to have on the helicopter and how many blades it's going to have. For the R88, the two-bladed system is a good choice. First of all, it's highly efficient, so we can get better performance at altitude for the same amount of power with a two-bladed rotor as opposed to something that has more blades, or at least the potential is there to do that with a two-bladed rotor. So one is it gives us good performance. The second one is with regard to cost. So fewer blades. It's a simpler design, so lower cost. So if our objective, as David said, is to democratize certain things,
sure,
with the R88, then cost is important. And then we look at capability to perform the mission. So can the aircraft perform the mission with the design that achieves the cost objective? And the answer is yes. With two blades, we can satisfy the demands for 80-90% of the mission set that we want to. There are certainly some aspects of a helicopter, some missions that require a higher performance or a different style of rotor, and the R88 won't satisfy those. But for 90% of the missions that people want to do, the two-bladed rotor is a great design for them. The other real discussion that happens around this is with regard to design and development risk. And we have seen in the industry that developing new rotors is a difficult job, even for organizations that have done a lot of that. You see aircraft that are in development for a long time because the rotor system is getting developed. So if you want to bring an aircraft to market and you want to accomplish it on a schedule that is going to be good for the business, then you really want to disconnect your technology development on the rotor side from your aircraft development. So of course, Robinson, we know two-bladed rotors. We are intimately familiar with how they work and how to make them great. And so to bring the R88 to the market in a time frame that's going to make it relevant, we pick the technology that we know and that works for the market.
Yeah, a couple of things I just want to add to that I think that are important. I mean, one, to hammer home that, like, over my entire career, I watched many rotors in development and also rotors that were developed and had scar tissue that people could point to, and I had some great leaders. Jim Harse was one of my great leaders. I saw him at the show this week, and like, these folks were scarred by the idea of, if you try to do a new rotor on an aircraft that's new, you have many cascading risks that then get much worse. I mean, we're not talking about multiplying risk. You can talk about square functions of risk. So in my mind, it was not the right business choice at that level. The other side, I think, that is to Sean's point, is we deliver 3/4 of our aircraft overseas to places that are not as, I'll say, full and rich of maintenance and MRO capabilities and maintenance capabilities as we have here in the U.S. or in Europe. And so for those markets, it is extremely important that it be an easy aircraft to look at and assess airworthiness, to feel and see that it's airworthy. Things with additional dependence on rubber and elastomeric dampers, or complex structures that are can degrade in unusual ways, less predictable than, say, in our case, simple roller bearings and the pitch change axis and all that. Those things make it a simpler aircraft to deal with in these global environments. Those are legitimate, constraints in parts of the world, and so we don't want to make an aircraft that requires extremely specialized skills to maintain, to operate, or to own. We want something that folks that are accessible to understand. They're not breaking physics or creating physics to try to do the underlying mission. So that's a big part of this. And I think when you really look at the data, the most rotors in the world by far is two-bladed rotor systems. And Robinson has the most recently designed, the best in the world, We have the leading civil produced helicopter in the world. That's the R44. And so because of that, the world really is a two-bladed system. And all these other folks that fly other things and talk about other things oftentimes are emphasizing things that are from their perspective. But the world's perspective is two-bladed rotors make missions happen and make small businesses successful. And a lot of that comes down to things like simplification, simple to operate, simple to maintain. And I think those are hallmarks that are synonymous with Robinson. So, one thing that I do point out, though, from the safety side, people have concerns. Two-bladed underslung rotors always have the challenge of mass bumping, always have the challenge of the low G exposure and having to stay away from that. We've done a lot of work in all these aircraft that we show on the floor today, the 66s and the 88s, all have advanced flight control systems with the ability to cue the pilot and push them away from low G. And if the autopilot is flying the aircraft and you are exposed to a low G event, it will push you back. It'll load the rotor. And so you don't have that same risk that the Vietnam Huey pilots had, where they were effectively flying the aircraft direct and with a lot of learning happening on the fly.
Yeah.
We know how this aircraft works. We know how low G works, and we're the experts in the industry about it. So I think because of all those things, it gives us a great foundation to say we've done an amazing job in the last several years to mitigate the entirety of that story. And I think we're excited to see customers come to that realization. And so we're going to tell that story over time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's unfounded internet sleuthing is what it kind of comes down to. Obviously, you guys are the experts in it, and that's where I trust, the source. And I think it's just a funny thing to see, to be honest.
I'd say if I could, I would love to sell people more blades and more engines. I think, but the reality is we're going to give them what they really need, which is one engine and two blades. And I think that it works really, really well for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Actually, I've heard a lot of people say that the R88 only has two blades. It actually has four.
That's
it has
true.
two on top
That's
and
right.
two in the
That's
back.
exactly
It's a
right.
four-bladed
I've
helicopter.
heard
That's
that
exactly
too.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So another topic, I mean, look, you can walk around the show here and see some aircraft from different OEMs that have been going through a very long, drawn-out certification process. Maybe the rotor system is being
It was
kind of
part of that.
Part
It
of
was
that.
part of that, yep.
So talk to me a little bit about the plan, because that's a huge deal, right? Certification is not easy, even for a company that's been doing it for 50 years. So talk to me
Yeah.
of the path and the milestones that we can expect for the R88.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R22 to the R66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
I'll tee it off, and then Sean can talk about some of the specific tactics of it. But one of the things I really appreciate about the way we've done things at Robinson is we think about the life cycle of certification projects always. So we're certifying a Garmin autopilot on the 66. We're certifying the NxG glass cockpits that integrate a lot of the instruments under glass. And we're certifying the R88, plus some other smaller projects along the way. Each of those builds on the other and allows us to both have increasing exposure and trust and communication with the regulators on topics of certification and making sure that things like the frequency of dialogue around issue papers and all of the necessary things about means of compliance are all happening every day, all the time. So our team breathes certification every day. That gives us this foundation that I think is rare in the industry, because most industrial players are fighting for R&D between military programs and commercial programs, and they're just not always doing regulatory actions of this scale. They might be doing small things, but not doing like certification projects like we are. So I feel like Sean's team is going to be the most proficient on the foundational level at doing these things at a high cadence and a high rate. The other thing that I think is important is scoping the project right. We scope the project deliberately to take away much of the risk factors that have driven other projects to go long. And I was on a project that is still in certification now 16 years in. And I'd say choices that are made at the original drawing table and the sketching table can turn you into the situation where it prolongs. So I feel like we've done a great job de-risking it. And there's a couple project elements that may be challenging, single pilot IFR being the biggest. But Sean can talk about some of the tactics in there,
Yeah, as David said, it's about picking the design of the aircraft or making design decisions that are going to be compatible with both achieving the functions of the aircraft that you need to, but also achieving certification and not unnecessarily complicating the certification process. So just as maintainers appreciate our aircraft for their simplicity to maintain, certifying those aircraft is also simpler. So a lot of the aspects of the aircraft are similar to what we've done before. So we know how to do that certification work. The FAA is comfortable with the work that we do. In areas where we need to, we've expanded or changed the design to do things that are different. But a lot of it is built on our legacy designs and our legacy methods of certifying things. So most of the aircraft, the certification risk is relatively low. One of the most important milestones, of course, is going to be first flight.
Yep.
Because you never know what you've got until you go fly it.
Sure.
And so really the calendar for certification starts from the time that we start flying the helicopter and learn the lessons that we will get out of flight testing. One thing that we are doing differently than we've done in the past is the number of aircraft that we're going to have in the flight test campaign. The R66 was, there was one prototype that was built and then really a second aircraft that was built that did almost all of the certification work in order to accelerate the schedule, and also because the R88 is a more complex aircraft, there will be multiple aircraft in the certification program. And of course, behind the scenes, what folks don't see, they count flight test helicopters, are so many test articles for structures and systems and tests that are going on behind the scenes, landing gear, all of these things, where we build many, many pieces and we test them, we break them, we validate that the design is good, or we change the design and update it.
The landing gear on the mock-up is one that we built with the production teams and the production process and things. It still may have some tweaks and changes. We love people's feedback on those types of things, but it's a good example of how because we're vertically integrated, I didn't have to go to a third party to go do the thing, to build the thing. It saved a ton in giving us this extra cut and extra learning curve on so many components in the aircraft. And so I think those are the hidden, unique secret sauce that Robinson can do to accelerate schedules,
What is a target date right now?
So, what we've been telling people is that, and we have a global market, so we say it intentionally, that by the end of the decade, we want these aircraft in many countries. And I think that means to do that, you need certification sometime before the end of the decade. And the timeline to do that will depend very much on the first flight and how that goes. Some of the ground testing on gearboxes and the bench will be important as well. And then some of the certification, we're depending on no big changes to how the certification organizations at FAA in particular are funded or resourced and prioritized. So we're optimistic that we can hold that schedule, and we're probably the lowest risk cert, out there in the market,
From a bit of a higher level, we've seen all the marketing. We're going to transition to the NxG, by the way. Kind of on a high level, what was the discussions of, hey, let's introduce the R66 NxG?
So I'll first start with saying that we've always had some brilliant people in our departments in paint and more recently in our upholstery departments that have the capability. They even do it as a side job. Sometimes they'll paint aircraft or cars or trucks, or whatever, and they are super creative people. So they were pulling for this in some ways. In addition, I think we have so many folks who fly aircraft in our team that they voiced it, and as part of the infusion of industrial design that came alongside the 88 planning, there was a lot of opportunity to say, hey, well, let's also look at this current generation Robinson products so that we can really step the game up. And it fell into place really perfectly because it's a passion of Sean's, it's a passion of Robin, it's a passion of our upholsterers and our painters. So again, as my job was simply to resource it, get out of the way. I can't pick colors for anything. I'm a very bad choice on that.
Same.
So I feel like it was a good example of just the right things enabling others within the business,
I think part of it was really looking at it from the perspective of what's going to drive somebody who owns an R66 today to come back and buy a new aircraft from us. And that's then leads you to look at what could we improve in the aircraft. That turned out to be much harder than I thought as we dig into the design and find out that, in fact, the as many people know, but really relearning the lessons, that the R66 design was really, really thoughtfully executed, really well done. So when you go looking for improvements in it, some of the things we started off on the path of saying, oh, we're going to make this better. And then as you dig into that, you find out, Actually, that's really
It's
an
already
amazing
pretty good.
design, and so the scope of the work was really defined by where the real opportunities were. So avionics is a natural choice because the technology there has progressed pretty significantly over the past decade. Some opportunities to put real value into the aircraft through updated avionics, the autopilot, of course, being a key piece of that, and then some other really focused on the user experience pieces, things like sun visors that, as a Robinson pilot, for years, wishing I had a sun visor, trying to get my hat
It's the
lower and
little- it's
lower.
the little
and,
things.
Yeah, so things like that we could do some little things and people would really get value out of those and say, oh, this is much better now, and this gives me a reason why I want to, instead of continuing to operate my existing R66, I'll come buy a new one.
Talk to me about the avionics. Obviously, from a pilot's perspective, it's kind of now what we expect, right? I'm expecting glass when I go and fly an aircraft. I'm expecting autopilot. So talk to us about the upgraded avionics in the NxG.
Sure. What we've done is we've gone to an all-glass cockpit based around Garmin avionics. But again, it comes to the why, which is why do you want glass cockpit? It's not just because you want a glass cockpit. And it really drives from the display of engine and system data on the displays. And the benefit there is that we can use color and texture on the displays in order to make the pilot more aware of where they are in the operating envelope with the engine. So that's a big piece. The other thing is, over time, our instrument panels had gotten larger and larger, blocking more and more of the view outside. And this was an opportunity to both put more capability into the panel and substantially make it smaller.
That's really incredible.
Yes.
Just one of
Yes.
Yeah, it's
I actually think one of the things that we feel is an important part of being a VFR or aircraft manufacturer is having these great experiences outside the cockpit that frankly keep the pilot's eyes looking out. And unfortunately, that's not the case in all the other aircraft in the class. And so I feel that for both 66s and for the 88s, that it was an emphasis point to get the avionics as tight as possible, as lean as possible, so that we have a maximum VFR capability.
And I think that obviously the buzz has been the R88, and it seems by and large very, very positive feedback here. What's been the excitement in the feedback regarding the announcement that you made on day one with the NxG?
It's actually, I would say it is almost as big as the 88 to our dealers, because the number of them that have said, one, I'm putting a new order in, so we've shot up over 300 ships back ordered on 66s,
Wow.
which is just crazy. And then you look at the list that are in the group that was preceding the announcement on Tuesday, and they're like, oh, please, I'd like to upgrade to the new configuration. So it is a highly desirable thing in almost every way. Some people love it for the materials choices and the colors. Some people love it for the avionics and the glass. I think everybody universally loves it for the autopilot and the bird strike windows. So there's a real crowd pleaser for everybody in that,
I think one of the pieces that hasn't probably gotten as much discussion as we might like, because it's not entirely visible to people, is this aircraft has the Garmin GDL60 data link in it, which is the first step on the road to a connected aircraft. The amazing thing with the GDL60, for those people who own and operate aircraft, is automatic database updates. So you no longer have to remember every 28 days to go to your aircraft and update the databases and either electronically transfer them or take your cards and do the thing. It happens automatically over the air, and you don't have to do that anymore. Equally important is the data that's recorded on the aircraft. So engine data, flight data is now available to the customer via the GDL60. It's offloaded onto the cloud and will be used to provide a range of services to our end customers. So I think that piece of data availability and automatic database updates, really the start of the connected aircraft, is going to be as important as many of the other pieces that we put into that.
Yeah, to Sean's point on that you got to think about how big that could be for Robinson. So with 100% of the component repair and overhaul that comes to us from around the world, and the fact that our customers depend on that for lower cost operating of their aircraft over long hauls and commercial missions, we have the ability to incentivize folks through seeing how they fly and seeing how they use the data, how they use the aircraft in service, and incentivize them financially to do that. And like all of that opens up this incredible engine that others can't really touch because they don't have control over the overhaul the way that we do, and they don't have that equipped on all their aircraft the way that we will. So it's a really great engine to build from, and the future is really bright with offboarding of this complex fleet data. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, and I think that's
a scoop for you, man, because we haven't gone that deep on it with anybody.
Yeah,
so
I get a little,
yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I know that you guys are busy. It's day 3, so there's more to do. So I don't want to steal you forever. But just real fast before we wrap up, talk about the different trim levels that we have with the
Sure.
NxG and the Riviera.
Yeah.
Kind of what is the differences?
Yeah,
and
I'll
things
just
like
highlight a couple things. So Southwood is our entry-level product. Tried to keep that as austere as possible, but it's still very high quality. All the leathers are very, very high touch and high finish. They're all actually at the booth for people to touch and feel. But the Southwood has a intentionally a starting point that is a lower price. You move up to Palo Verde, you get more of the features and the sun visors and some of the additional features that come with the avionics. All those things are built in. That we think is it seems to be, from what we've heard from the order so far, that is the lion's share of customers, the private customers, the charter customers, those types of folks. Seems like a high take rate there. And then Riviera is a special edition, so one that we will build for 12 months. We'll take orders for 12 months, and we'll basically have the opportunity to build a very, very small lot that we expect to be in the dozens of units, not hundreds. And so the intent is to offer customers something that's one of a kind, or in their country, it may be the only one like that in their area. And it's beautiful. It's amazing to touch, and it has little features in it that others don't, like the entire upper console, where the air conditioning system and the lighting is all done, is unique to the aircraft. All of the headliner is unique. All of the touch and the seats are unique. Things that you won't be able to find anywhere else, and it's hard to imagine somebody else doing that aftermarket. I've seen some great aftermarkets, but I've not seen anything like that in the aftermarket. So I think it's such a unique opportunity, and that's why we expect some customers who are longtime Robinson owners that want something special, want something unique. We've given them that in the Riviera. So,
yeah, it's super cool. And the first one is a planned auction.
That's right.
Leading to
That's
donation.
Right. We thought about this a long time ago. About a year ago, someone came to us, one of our dealers. They're always doing this. They're like, I would like to place an order now for ship number 1500. Of course, 1500 is a beautiful number. The 1500 R66 is a big deal.
Yeah, of course.
Many aircraft will never get to 1500 ships, and so to me, 1500 means a lot. So we want to feature that aircraft, and that was part of the genesis of the idea of Riviera. And we wanted to say, what causes can we contribute to help support the betterment of the industry? So pilots, mechanics, helicopter emergency services, and STEM education are the 4 areas. And we'll probably, whoever wins the auction for this will be able to pick between the 4, and we'll have four causes they want. And we'll we don't care about the tax deductible stuff ourselves. We'll just have them donate direct, and that's the kind of thing we would like to drive in the industry. People contributing to things that matter.
Yeah, it's super cool. Well, you guys, congratulations on a heck of a show. Are you tired?
No, my voice is tired, though.
Yeah, my voice.
Not the rest of my body. I'm fine.
Well,
I'm
and
fine.
honestly, just to touch on that real fast, great job. Seriously. I don't know about you, but public speaking is difficult. And, with the announcement on Sunday, it was really well done. The announcement on day one. So obviously you're astute at that. And it's just been an incredible show. It's been fun to see Robinson. Again, the transformation to me, it feels like this should have taken years. And the fact that just 12 months ago, we were congratulating David on stepping into this role, and now to see the changes from the marketing, of course, to the new sheet aircraft design, the NxG, just everything about it is so cool. So congratulations to you guys.
Thanks, Halsey. But I'll just tell you, we're not miracle workers. This just tells you that you get the right team together. People can transform a lot.
Yeah, it's
the
huge.
foundation is great at Robinson. We started with a fantastic business, and we just built on that. And I think you look at this industry, we got a lot of folks who have great businesses. So if they want to breathe life into an idea or a product or do something really, disruptive, boy, it's a great industry to do that. We go too many shows without seeing something new, and I think it's an exciting opportunity for others to see what we were able to do with, probably something that's not so different than what others have in this trade show. They can all go after this type of an opportunity.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
Super excited to do it.
To our listeners, thank you guys so much for continuing to listen and support the Helicopter Podcast. We didn't talk about the new website that Robinson has, so make sure that you go and check out the new website. I've been there; it's awesome.
Yeah,
and that's important, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a huge deal. Of course, training in the Army with the T66. Verticon actually posted an article on that just the other day, so please make sure that you're catching up on that. That's huge news. And just another reason to get you back on the podcast. We always got to leave a little something. So Sean, David, thank you guys so much. And to our listeners, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R22 to the R66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
At Astronautics, we're aviation problem solvers. With over 60 years of OEM and retrofit experience, bring us your toughest avionics, connectivity, cybersecurity, and system challenges. We'll work with you to find an innovative, reliable, and quality solution. We turn problems into solutions. Visit us at astronautics.com.
We know you love helicopters. That's why you're here. But are you ready to make it a career? Hillsboro Heli Academy has been making dreams of flying helicopters come true since 1980. Visit us at flyhaa.com and dream big.